Tuesday. Thank you for joining us on this very hot Tuesday, August evening. Appreciate everybody who's able to join us. Just to start, my name is Agila Nataraj. I work with the Kepler Institute. I am one of the youth leaders in the, maybe not youth, young adult leaders in the space. And just before we start, I want to kind of just set the space and the stage for where this ground lease orientation is going to move through. And just really appreciate everybody walking with us through this journey and us being part of and building this larger community through the Community Land Trust. Just to be clear, and we've mentioned this before, the work of the Community Land Trust is rooted in impacting generations to come with affordable housing. We're about creating permanent, affordable communities that are not lost and grow as they develop. So this presentation and this work is not really driven through the lens of getting down payment assistance, but really the CLT model is not just about one person getting funding toward a home, but all of us collectively working together and being part of something that is so much bigger. It is a worldwide movement and will help people in the future. And we'll be going into a little bit more details of what that looks like in this ground lease orientation. We'll be walking, next slide. So we'll be walking you through the most important points of our ground lease. The purpose of this workshop is to ensure that you all fully understand your rights and responsibilities as a potential homeowner for the Indy CLT. And as you can see, here's a brief overview of our agenda. So we'll be doing quick group check-in and staff introductions. We'll be doing a Community Land Trust overview. We'll be talking about eligibility, the key ground lease terms and our Q&A, the qualified capital improvement policy, and the next steps you can take if you're interested in buying a home through the Indy CLT. And we'll do our best to answer questions as we go and also at the end. And just a couple just really quick housekeeping items. And as we're talking about doing the Q&A, that as people type, that we are asking you to type your questions in the chat or raise your hand. And also feel free to reach out later with questions if, as you're going through and digesting this information, questions come up, which I can. I mean, there's a lot. So we'll put our email in the chat for folks. And, as you know, there's a lot of questions we know. So if we don't get to your question, we will reach out and email you afterwards. And also, if you don't feel comfortable asking your question on a Zoom call with others, please email us and we will connect and respond to you in a timely manner as well. And with that, we will start and go to our check-in, if you don't mind going to that next, Stephanie. Perfect. And so, for folks who've been at the previous conversations or meetings, Kepra, part of our culture we love to do is we do a quick group check-in and just a quick refresher for folks who, maybe it's been a while or want to know what this is. We do a color and a number, and both just kind of indicate where you're at. If you could describe where you're at with the color, what color would it be? And then number. People usually do a scale of 1 to 10, but, freestyle, whatever number also resonates with you in the moment. And then we'll do a question of the day. And today's question, because it is very hot, is real quick and simple. What is your favorite drink that you go to cool down when it's hot like this outside? And what I can do is I can start and just model it for folks who maybe aren't as familiar. So again, my name is Agila. I'm with the Kepler Institute. And I would say today I'm feeling like a leaf green. There's a lot of great greenery outside, and we'll also go around too. And if folks don't want to put in the chat, that's fine as well. And I'm feeling like a 9. It's a good day. And then I would say I'm a big coffee drinker, so I need an iced coffee. during this time. I love a good iced coffee as well. And I'm gonna pop it over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Akila. I'm a 9 orange, and I would say I love me some iced coffee as well, or a little later in the day, some Moscato would treat me well. And I'll turn it over to Alvin.
Thank you. I am feeling like an 8. Again, it's been a good day. Meaningful conversations with dear friends and colleagues, and color sunshine yellow. And my favorite ice, definitely ice water. But I've also been enjoying iced tea in the afternoon lately. And I will pass it over to Cherie Richardson. And when you finish checking in, you can pass to the next person.
All righty. I am Cherie Richardson. I don't drink coffee. I like warm tea with mostly all my meals. And what else? I'm sorry,
Good
lost
for
my train of thought.
digestion.
Exactly. I lost my train of thought. Oh, I'm just excited really about this opportunity. And I am a mother of 6 children. So let me see who I could pass it to. Uh-oh, wrong thing.
And Cherie, how old are
Oh,
your kids?
I have my oldest just went away to college. She's 18. And I have a 15-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, I have 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Gosh, the full spectrum.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am going to pass it to Jeffrey.
Thank you, Sheree. Jeff, I'm a good teal, 8.5, and I as well love a good iced tea. I want to respect if there's anybody else. Lynn, do you mind going? Thanks.
Sorry, it takes a minute to unmute when I'm on my iPhone. I'm actually headed out of town. I'm currently somewhere in Illinois, might be in Missouri. I'm not sure. I'll go with an 8.5, and I'm a yellow, just a positive outlook yellow, 8.5, and I'm going with straight water. It is hot outside today. Oh, and
Awesome.
I'm going to
Thanks, Lynn,
pass
for
it.
joining it. You going or coming to town?
I'm leaving. I'm headed out.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it to Ashley.
Hello, everyone. My color of the day is yellow. Most of my days are yellow. It's my favorite color. Um, on a number spectrum, I'm about a 6 today. The heat has
It's
got me down under. And my go-to drink is ice water.
maybe we'll go
Thank you,
ahead.
Ashley.
And I will pass it to Mr. M.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Colors teal, numbers 9. I've been really lucky today to stay fairly stationary and in the air condition, which is very rare for me. So I'm loving and staying out of the heat. So no complaints there. The question is my go-to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whiskey neat, a good whiskey
Oh, in the heat?
I'm in air conditioning, remember?
Oh, that's okay. I'm sorry.
Now, if it's in, who is that? Is that a Gila? Is that a Gila asking them hard questions? So if it's in the heat,
clarifying questions.
in the heat, of course, it's going to be a glass of cold water on ice.
Mm-hmm.
But today, I'm lucky enough not to have to be in the heat. So there we have it. I can't see. So Gila, since you checking me, pass it to somebody for me.
I'm not checking you, just asking some clarifying questions.
I need to be checked. I'm that kind of guy. Check me, please.
Let's see. And help me if I mispronounce your name, but Atia or Atia? please correct me if I'm wrong. I want to make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Pass it to you. Oh.
And if you're speaking, we can't hear you. They might also be having some mic issues.
But I did see the check-in in the chat.
Okay, I see.
So we have a green 7 lemonade.
No
Oh, your
worries.
speaker's
All
not
right.
working.
Awesome.
Glad your chat is though.
And we'll
And
go
we
ahead.
also had Nicholas join us.
So I'll go ahead and pass it to Nicholas. Color, number, and go-to drink when it's hot.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Thank you so much, Agila. Let's see. Still having a great day. I want to say 9.8. Gonna go with my Royal Black. And go-to drink. Definitely still have a lot of that old Southern sweet iced tea and lemonade. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the lemonade or the tea or the combination, but that tends to hit the spot for me. And who has not gone? I can pass it to someone.
Let's see.
Oh, Aprilli just joined us.
Okay, perfect. Yes. We'll pass it to Aprilli. We're doing our usual check-ins, color, number, and then our question for the day is go-to drink when it's hot outside.
Yay.
Hi.
Hey everyone, my name is Aprilli and my number is 9 and color is like lavender, purple. And my go-to drink is like a ginger beer or like just ginger carbonated drink.
No, it's solid. Let's see.
Thanks. Good
Who
to see
else
you
has
all.
not good? It's nice to see you as well. I think, has everybody gone? Help me. Or might be.
I believe everyone's gone. Sherry put her checking in the chat, but
Okay.
if you want to invite her to unmute, we could do that too.
Yes, feel free. I'll invite you to unmute too, Sherry, if you want to speak, or no pressure. I don't know, Sherry, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Yeah, and Sherry put in the chat that she is a blue 8 and matcha.
Okay. Ooh, matcha is also really good, especially if it's iced. That's a good one. All right. So, we'll go ahead and go into the next part and just give a quick introduction of our wonderful team. We have Khalil Moafrika, who is our lead educator. He's not able to join our call today. He's out here doing some education. He's helping facilitate another workshop. We got Stephanie, who's our education and advocacy manager, Nicholas, who's our development and legal consultant, Alvin, our CLT coordinator, and Jeff, who's our consultant and has been very helpful in helping us build this program and community infrastructure out. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it to
who are you?
Oh, I said earlier, my name is Agila, and I am one of the young adult leaders in this space. My work is in some of the grants, financial management, and also environmental and climate work area of the work as well. And wear different hats, facilitator sometimes, researcher, whatever's called for in the moment.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. And I will go ahead and pass it to Alvin.
All right. Thank you, Agila. So, and I know y'all have sat through a couple presentations we've done, so we'll try and keep this short and sweet as we can. So I just want to also thank our CLT advisory board that helped us put together a mission statement. And the mission statement is that the Indianapolis Community Land Trust equips Black, Brown, and under-resourced Indy residents to use land and housing to build community wealth. The Indy CLT organizes residents to create cooperative, permanently affordable housing for the benefit of present and future generations. Guided by the principles of self-reliance, self-determination, anti-displacement, and racial justice, we work to increase housing opportunities with a focus on communities previously excluded from access to home ownership. And then you can go to the next slide. And again, we would like also to support the folks who've made this possible. So our CLT advisory board, our team, as well as support from the city of Indianapolis that really provided the funding for us to be able to make it a reality, as well as the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life Initiative and the Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership. So next slide, a little overview of what community land trusts are. And this is just a quick refresher, typically a nonprofit focused on affordable housing or other things. So community land trust really can be used for any kind of land use that's meant to be community controlled. So it could be agriculture, could be commercial, and it could be residential. Again, we're starting out focusing on affordable housing as a major need in our communities and challenge here and everywhere. So focus on serving low-income qualified households, otherwise that couldn't have attained home ownership. And again, like, as y'all know, with rents skyrocketing, the chance to be able to build equity while also balancing that with trying not to gentrify our neighborhoods. It's kind of a delicate balance between building wealth as well as making sure that our communities remain affordable for everybody. And the idea is the CLT helps to leverage investment. So that could be investment from the government, investment from organizations like the Indianapolis African American Quality of Life in order to invest it and put that money in the hands of people like you in our community to make home ownership possible. And that's sometimes called a shared equity model, where folks who own the housing share equity with future owners in the community. Next slide. So how does a community land trust work? So again, we're going to talk today about that particular mechanism, which sounds really legal and wonky, but really just remember that ground lease is just a legal document that helps make sure that the land and housing is affordable for future generations. So there's a couple of pieces, again, we emailed out that overview that really speaks at a high level of the main points of every article. And again, if you are selected for the program, one of the requirements is you'll sit down with an attorney of your choice that we're going to pay for up to $300 for you to be able to go through it in detail to make sure you understand everything. But we just want to make sure you have a clear understanding going into the process before you do all the work of the application and stuff to understand and make sure this is something that y'all want to do. And again, for us, we just want to think this could be a resource for folks. So there's no pressure for y'all to move forward with it. There are other opportunities for affordable housing, which we're going to continue to share with our email list. So typically, community land trusts are able to raise funding, which again, for our pilot, that's up to $100,000 to help people buy a property. That investment or that investment in affordable housing is kept affordable through that ground lease, which sets how much, when people go to sell it again, how much they can sell it for. And the idea that they would sell it to another like family that is qualified through the Community Land Trust. Next slide. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Stephanie to talk about, again, eligibility for the program.
Thank you, Alvin. So in order to be pre-eligible and considered for CLT homeownership, you and everyone in your house must collectively earn less than 60% of the area median income here in Indy, which is less than the figures you see here below at the time of closing on the CLT home. So for example, for a one-person household, that's a maximum of $43,260 a year. We're focusing our resources for households under the 60% area median income because those are the most housing cost burden and left out of the traditional market and most affordable homeownership opportunities. Good news, once the CLT homeowner closes on the house, they don't have to stay at or below this income requirement. There's not an annual income certification. And we're also going to just quickly review the steps to becoming a CLT homebuyer. The first step is to understand the CLT model and the Indy CLT. Hopefully you've attended our launch party and or our buyer info sessions. We also have lots of details available online and our full home buyer choice program guidelines. The next step, which many of you have already completed, is to become a member of the Indy CLT. If you haven't already done this, don't worry. You have the website here. It's quick and free. Be sure to check yes when asked if you're interested in obtaining affordable housing through the Indianapolis CLT. The third step is to complete our screening form, which several of you have already done. Upon signing up for membership and indicating your interest in obtaining affordable housing, our team will send you a screening form. If you've already signed up for membership, we send you the screening form within 24 hours. This screening form serves to determine pre-eligibility based on the income level we just talked about, that's 60% AMI, and helps us to better understand how many people are interested in the CLT, along with the circumstances that they may be going through and kind of the household demographics. Step 4 is to attend the Indy CLT Ground Lease Orientation. You are here. This is what you're doing tonight. We want to make sure you understand how the CLT works and what makes it unique before you spend more time to complete the application. Step 5 is an application, education, and lending approval. For those of you who have already completed the steps above, in the next 24 hours, we'll send you the application along with the list of lenders who have agreed to work with our CLT. You'll need to get a pre-approval from one of these lenders, and this is where I'd actually recommend that you start, as it can take a little longer to get that pre-approval and may require some back and forth. We'll also be having a virtual session with our CLT lenders in a couple weeks, which I'll talk about toward the end of the presentation. You'll also need to attend a HUD certified first-time homebuyer education course. That's a lot of words. This is free, or there is a free option, or there's a $75 virtual option available through INHP. There's also a free online course called HomeView, and we'll send information about this out with the application. Part of your application will be attaching your mortgage pre-approval letter and your certificate of completion for that homebuyer education course. This is very important. Everything must be completed and submitted by the end of the day, September 30th, 2024, so in just about a month, for consideration in this round of funding. 4 households will be invited to continue with the process based on completing the items in this step: a lottery drawing, which I'll talk about in a minute, and funding availability. We are optimistic that once the first homeowners have gone through the process, more funding will become available. Everyone who completes the first 5 steps will be entered into a lottery to receive program funds. This lottery will take place during our October CLT membership meeting, which is October 9th. And there is a free, obviously it's a free meeting, RSVP for that is available online. Winners of the CLT lottery will be provided with a letter indicating the maximum amount of affordability assistance it will provide and the amount of time that you'll have in order to make an offer on a home. As a reminder, because of limited funding, 4 households will be accepted into the Homebuyer Choice Program. More information about what happens between program acceptance to closing is available online and also in the buyer info session recording that we did a couple weeks ago. One thing that I do want to point out is that we will require that you meet with an attorney before closing to review the ground lease, loan documents, and closing documents. Once we get to this point, we're happy to provide you with some recommendations on lawyers who are familiar with our paperwork and process, or you can find one on your own. And as Alvin mentioned, we'll cover up to $300 for the cost of meeting with that attorney. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, our friend and consultant, to take you through some of the most important features of our ground lease.
Thanks, Stephanie. Stephanie shared, as I introduce myself, in case you missed that introduction, my name is Jeff Washburn. I'm a consultant, Community Land Trust consultant that's had the privilege to have worked over the last 6 or so months with the Indy CLT and the Keffer Institute to develop kind of the documents and policies and procedures to help move the organization forward. For about 20 years, I worked for a Community Land Trust in Minneapolis, and helping out just kind of to answer questions that anyone may have as it relates to the ground lease and make sure that everybody feels comfortable with this document and the terms and conditions that are associated with it. So as Alvin hinted, ground lease, what is this thing? It's a mysterious document, but essentially it's the guiding document that gives guidance to the relationship between the Community Land Trust, the entity that's set up to not only assist households into achieving housing and home ownership, but also is there to ensure that those homes stay affordable for future generations of home buyers. And the way that that's accomplished is through this technical mechanism or document. And so ground lease essentially is the tool that assists the organization in maintaining the relationship with the homeowner. Essentially, what the Community Land Trust does, and as was shared, the Community Land Trust maintains ownership of the land, and the homeowner, through their relationship with the Community Land Trust, through this ground lease mechanism, is conveyed rights as well as responsibilities in the ownership of the property. The two biggest conditions, and there's a whole bunch of minor kind of rules and responsibilities, but the two biggest conditions are that the homeowner understands that once they purchase the Community Land Trust home, is that if and when they ever decide to sell the home, that's on them when they choose to do so. But when they do, they agree to sell it to another income qualified household. So in the case of the Indy CLT, we're looking at other households in the future that are earning less than 60% of median income in Indianapolis. And they agree to a resale formula, kind of that mechanism that's there to ensure that the next buyer is going to get passed on the same good deal that the first home buyer is able to achieve. Next, please. So again, the homeowner agrees that if and when they sell the home, it's going to be made available to another household at a similar income as the first household that was purchased. And with the Indy CLT, the homeowner agrees that if and when they move on to purchase, the next buyer purchases the property, they're going to purchase it for what the previous homeowner purchased it for, plus a fixed rate amount that was paid to the first homeowner as they went to sell the property. So in the case of the Indy CLT, that homeowner who lived in the home for several years is going to receive a percent of the purchase price that they paid for every year they lived in the home. Next slide. So here is the example with the Indy CLT. The resale or the fixed rate resale formula is a 2% fixed rate resale formula. So if you all don't mind, walk through this example with me. Let's just assume that there's a home that's for sale in Indianapolis that is selling for $250,000. And for argument's sake, let's assume that all of us on this call are able to achieve or obtain a mortgage for $150,000. So there's a gap there. And what the Indy CLT has worked hard to do is secure funding to bridge the difference between what we can get a mortgage for and the cost of that property. So in this case, at closing, the Indy CLT is bringing $100,000 in assistance to our $150,000 mortgage. We live in the home and we're making mortgage payments on that $150,000 mortgage. We don't have to pay the Indy CLT anything. We're not paying interest on that. But if and when we decide to sell, in the example here, we're assuming it's 10 years later, let's assume that that home value has now increased to $350,000. So it's gone up in value. What that means for a 2% fixed rate resale formula is that we are going to receive 2% of the effective affordable price that we paid, or to $150,000. So for every year that we've lived in the home, we will receive $3,000 plus, or multiply that by the number of years that we've lived in the property, 10 years, equates to $30,000. So we would receive $30,000 when we went to sell our home 10 years later. Plus, we would also receive all of the principal we paid off on that $150,000 mortgage. And if we received any sort of forgivable down payment assistance, or if we came into the transaction with additional down payment, we would also receive those funds when we went to sell. What that means for the affordability of the home is that the next buyer, instead of buying that home for $350,000, or even the same price that we might have had to pay had the funds not been in place, $250,000, the next buyer is buying that $350,000 valued property for $180,000. So it'd be what we paid for the property, $150,000, plus the $30,000, the proceeds that we had when we sold the property, equates to the next buyer's purchase amount. And so it's pretty straightforward. For every year that a Community Land Trust homeowner lives in their property, they will receive 2% of whatever that purchase price, or the land trust purchase price, is that they paid on the property.
And Jeff, I know when I was learning about homeownership, I didn't realize some of the components of a mortgage. Can you talk a little bit more about the mortgage principal that you talked about, potentially having paid some of that off? How is that work?
Sure. So thank you. Great question, Stephanie. When any of us go out and get a mortgage on a property, which is often called the first mortgage, we're going to sit down and meet with a mortgage lender, and they're going to check our credit worthiness. They're going to check how much money we make, and they're going to do some sort of a calculation. Typically, they want to make sure that we're not spending more than 30% of that income that Stephanie talked about on more than 30% on housing costs. And so what goes into that calculation is that mortgage lender is going to figure out how much we're going to be paying in property taxes. They're going to figure out how much we're more or less likely going to have to pay in insurance. What's left after that of that 30% is the amount that they will calculate that we will have available to pay a combination of principal, that $150,000, and then on that $150,000 over 30 years, they're going to want us to pay interest rates. So out in the market, folks are talking about interest rates today, give or take interest rates, mortgage interest rates are about 6.5%. So annually for that $150,000, we're paying 6.5% interest on that every year. But as we're making that payment to the bank, paying them back a portion of that $150,000, we're also making a portion payment of the interest that's accrued on the property. And so in the early days, we're paying off a lot of the interest, unfortunately, on the property. But the more that we pay down that principal of $150,000, for every amount that we're paying down on that $150,000, that is essentially our dollars that we've accrued for ourselves. When we go to sell, it's essentially we've been paying it into the bank of ourselves. But it does take a while. It takes essentially 30 years to pay down that $150,000 in this example. So on the front end, it's quite a bit of an interest. As you stay in the home longer, more and more of that payment is going toward essentially paying yourself or paying toward the equity of the property. Thanks, Stephanie. So what does this mean? If you use the example from the previous screen, that means that the next buyer of the home that we purchased 10 years ago is able to buy this $350,000 property for $180,000. It also means that the Indy CLT invested $100,000 to help us purchase a home 10 years ago. And that $100,000 has grown to $170,000 in community benefit, which is going to get passed on to the next buyer without Indy CLT or other people having to go back to the funding partners and folks that are investing dollars in affordable housing to ask for more money, because we've been able to capture that additional affordability assistance through the appreciation in the housing market. And it also means that initial $100,000 that the Indy CLT put in is not just helping one household, but it's helping a second household. And when that second household goes to sell, that same $100,000 is going to go on and assist that third household and onward. Thanks. The ground lease is a long-term relationship and document. In most states, that ground lease term is 99 years. And the moment that a property sells and another household or homeowner gets into title, that 99-year clock starts over again. So it's really a long-term, durable community benefit that the ground lease is able to assist multiple households, and the dollars that are put in today could help multiple generations of home buyers achieve better housing for themselves and their families. The ground lease is also inheritable. So for argument's sake, let's say that I bought a community land trust house through the Indy CLT, and my time gets short and I pass on. I can leave that property to a spouse, a partner, children, stepchildren, foster children, regardless of their income. If I wanted to leave my home to Alvin, though, we're not related, but if I want to leave my home to Alvin would have to be income qualified below 60% of AMI to be able to move into the property. Any of those family members that I listed before would not have to be income qualified. So I can leave it to any of them without any sort of income qualification. As stated, if I left it to Alvin and he wasn't income qualified, the land trust would assist Alvin in selling the property. He would still get all the proceeds from my sale, but he just wouldn't be able to live in the property. The land trust would be there to ensure that another household below 60% of area median income would be able to live in that property. The other thing I think worth noting is that the Community Land Trust always has the right of first refusal or purchase on the property. That means that, let's say I'm getting ready to sell my land trust property and I haven't even thought about who I wanted to list it or what point in time I was going to sell it. The Indy CLT could step in and say, you know what, Jeff, we're going to buy it back per the resale formula. We're going to make it easy for you. We're just going to buy it back from you. And maybe they wanted to do some additional work on the property before they resold it, or maybe they had another purpose for that property, but it's going to be a community purpose, and that affordability would get passed on to somebody else, but they do have the right to buy back that property. Stephanie. In consideration for the good deal that the Community Land Trust is giving me, if I purchase a home through the Community Land Trust, I'm agreeing to pay $100 in combined lease fees. There are two lease fees. There's a $50 ground lease fee, and essentially that money goes to help the Community Land Trust go on and help more households achieve housing, do better for themselves, as well as provide me post-purchase support if I'm a land trust homeowner. So providing events, post-purchase trainings, helping me out if I need a contractor that I need to have some work done on my home. The land trust is there as a resource, but more importantly, and equally important, I should say, it's there to assist more households get into affordable housing in the Indianapolis area. In addition, the Indy CLT has a repair and reserve fee. So wanting to make sure that we're thinking about the future, they have a fund that will be set up essentially in the name of my property, that every month there'll be $50 that are going into that repair and reserve fee. That repair and reserve fee, there's a future slide that will talk through this, but it really goes to making sure that I can take care of a number of exterior potential challenges that might exist down the road and taking care of the property, making sure that those funds are there. Typically, homeowners have the opportunity to make those payments on a monthly basis. Sometimes homeowners choose to pay them ahead of time or just pay them in one lump fee, but there is the lease fee that that will be in place for homeowners to pay. Part of that is essentially to help maintain the home. The other half is to help grow the Indy CLT. There are limitations on how quickly or how rapidly, if there were to be a change to increase the lease fee, it only would go up at a dollar amount per year. So it's not going to go up at a large amount. So you're going to know, and the lender is going to know how much that lease fee and how predictable it will be in payment. And it's important that homeowners pay this lease fee. If they don't make this lease fee payment, it would be considered a breach of the ground lease. And the Indy CLT, we want to sit down and kind of understand what the situation was that was making it difficult for a homeowner to be able to make those payments. Next, please. That exterior repair and replacement reserve fund, again, is to support significant future repairs to the exterior of the property. So really focused on the things on the outside, which are often and typically the expensive things on the property. So a roof, windows, exterior, the siding of the property. These funds could be used by the homeowner or by the Indy CLT to take care of these things. The process that a homeowner would go through, yes, the homeowners be making payments into this. The Indy CLT would be doing the accounting on those funds in the name of the property, in the name of the homeowner. A homeowner, if they felt they wanted to make these repairs, would put forward a request to the Indy CLT. The Indy CLT staff and or committee, if assigned, would review that request and move forward with approving the funds and making sure that payment was made to whoever the vendor was, a contractor or whoever was doing that work would be monitored by the Indy CLT. Thanks.
And Jeff, what happens if I move and I haven't used the repair reserve fund fees?
Yep. So thank you. Great question. Those funds would stay with the Indy CLT in the name of this property, helping and moving and essentially creating opportunity for that next buyer to make sure that they had funds in place in case they needed to take care of any of these things as well. Additional ground lease terms and conditions. permitted uses. So part of this ground lease is ensuring that folks are using the home as it was intended, that it's going to be used as a primary residential housing unit for households. In most cases, the rules of the Indy CLT are going to align with what the rules and regulations and zoning codes are of the city of Indianapolis. We're going to want to make sure that homeowners live in the home. The ground lease stipulates that homeowners need to live in the home at least 10 months out of every year. Ideally, we're anticipating that homeowners are going to live in the home all the time. But there could be instances that a homeowner would need to not live there, and there's going to be a process for which homeowners would need to waiver from that policy if need be through a committee of the Indy CLT. The idea is that this is going to be owner occupied by the folks that purchase the property, but in the event somebody else is staying at the property, making sure that the Indy CLT has an understanding of who those lessees are going to be, if there is that kind of instance, and having the right to have that conversation and determine if what that process looks like with that household that's also living with the homeowner that purchased the property. The Indy CLT does have the right to inspect the property, but it's only in the case of an emergency or in the event when the time comes that a homeowner wants to sell. So the Indy CLT is going to want to walk through the property when a homeowner is ready to sell, just to make sure that both the homeowner and the Indy CLT are on the same page about if there are any repair items that need to be taken care of. But the Indy CLT doesn't have a key to the home. They can't just knock on the door and say, we want to get into the property. They're not a landlord. They're a partner in home ownership. And so recognizing that the only time they're going to be asking to get in the home is if there's a bona fide emergency and either the household or the structure is at risk of harm. Homeowners with the Indy CLT are able to refinance and access home equity lines of credit or HELOCs. So, once homeowners are in the home for a while, maybe they've built up some equity. We're talking about paying down principal. Maybe they've satisfied terms of down payment assistance. There's been appreciation. They've lived in the home for several years, and a portion of that appreciation is theirs as well through that resale formula. So homeowners are going to have a chance, if they want to, maybe refinance into a lower interest rate. They could also take out a home equity line of credit if they needed to access funds to do something else that was important to themselves or their families. And they would be allowed to do so up to the limit of their equity. So they couldn't, in the case of our example, several slides before, they couldn't tap into the Indy CLT's $100,000 portion of that purchase. But if they've accrued equity over time, they could tap into the equity that they've amassed through their time in the property. And then lastly, qualified capital improvements. So, a question that often comes up is, all right, well, if I want to make some big significant changes or improvements to the property, how do I make sure that I'm recognized financially for those big improvements? So next slide, please.
And actually, Jeff, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit more about what is equity and why would somebody want to have a home equity line of credit?
Yeah. Home equity lines, again, it's the portion of principal that a homeowner maybe is paid down over time, and or again, per the resale formula, if somebody's lived in their home for the example that we gave, 10 years at 1.5%, $30,000 of those funds could be theirs to tap into. And in my experience, homeowners have tapped into home equity to pay for school, to assist a child. Maybe a household's gotten into a pinch and they really need a vehicle, and they've been able to tap into that home equity to be able to purchase those things. To make a move that's been really beneficial to them. A number of homeowners have also used home equity lines to make improvements to the property as well. So a great example going into these next slides is, let's say I bought a home that had an unfinished basement, and my family's growing and I want to convert the basement to a bedroom and a bathroom. A home equity line would allow me to finance essentially or pay for those improvements to my property without having to go to a bank and borrow additional funds separately, or have to save up that money otherwise on my own.
Thanks, Jeff.
So qualified capital improvements. essentially significant upgrades that enhance the functionality, efficiency, or accessibility of the home, and the kind of the role that the Indy CLT is going to play in kind of approving these qualified capital improvements is trying to balance the home with encouraging the homeowner to take care of the property and to make investments in the property the way that they see fit. Next. So examples of qualified capital improvements that would be approved, if the example I gave, adding a bedroom or bathroom in a basement, finishing a basement or an attic space, adding an accessibility ramp, upgrading the house with energy efficient windows or solar panels, residing a property, major renovations like to totally gut rehab a kitchen or add a garage where maybe the house didn't have a garage are all examples of qualified capital improvements. Things that probably don't qualify as qualified capital improvements and wouldn't, a homeowner could do these things, they just wouldn't receive any financial consideration for them, would be, painting walls, changing out light fixtures, things that a lot of times people would consider just regular maintenance of a home, caulking, around windows or, tidying up the place. Those kinds of things are not going to be considered. That's just going to be general upkeep. And also luxury additions like swimming pools or hot tubs, things that necessarily, maybe they add a little bit of value, but they're seen as only things that might add cost and maintenance to a property are more than likely not going to be considered for a qualified capital improvement. Again, if a homeowner wanted to put in a swimming pool, as long as the city of Indianapolis allowed for it, I suppose they could do that. They would just need to understand that the Indy CLT wouldn't recognize and financially recognize that investment, and the homeowner shouldn't expect to get compensated for that. Next.
What about like a new air conditioner or a water heater?
And I'm trying to remember the details, but I believe in the Indy CLT that both of those would qualify: a new furnace, a new air conditioner. Those items, things that the typical world would see as a depreciation, would also be depreciated over time, though. So if it cost me $10,000 to put in a new heating and air conditioning system, I believe that the depreciation of that kind of a system would be 20 years. So it may cost me $10,000. If I sold 10 years later, the Indy CLT would depreciate 50% of that because I utilized that new HVAC system, heating and air conditioning system, for half of its expected life. So I pay $10,000, but when I go to sell, Indy CLT is going to recognize $5,000 of that. That will be mine. The other $5,000, essentially, I've used the life of that, and so I would not get the full $10,000 back 10 years in. I would just get part of that back. And so I'm just going to run through a couple real quick examples of how this qualified capital improvement would work. There's a whole bunch of qualified capital improvements that homeowners could make, but the example here, we're going to use the same example that I used in the resale formula example, where we have a home that's worth $250,000. We all purchased it for a land trust price of $150,000, but 10 years into ownership, we decide that we need new siding, or we want new siding on the property. The cost of that siding is $30,000. But there's going to be a maximum that the Indy CLT is going to recognize that I will be able to put into it. And so that maximum is 20% of the future value. So 10 years into owning the home, I will have amassed the new value of that property, as per our example, is going to be $180,000. So I am going to be able to essentially claim credit for the lesser of what it cost me, or what the maximum QCI or qualified capital improvement amount would be. So in this case, I would receive $30,000 of the cost. So essentially, the CLT would recognize my full investment of $30,000. But let's say 12 years after the siding was replaced, I've lived in the home now 22 years. I'm deciding to sell the home. So what that means for me is that I am going to receive 2% of the $150,000, which is $3,000 a year for 22 years, is $66,000. So if I sell 22 years later, I'm going to get $66,000 plus I've used up a portion of the life of those of the siding that I put on the property, right? So in this case, for every year, it has a 30-year depreciation. I've lived in the home for 12 years with that siding on the property. So that means that there's 18 years left of livable life of the siding. So I'm going to receive $18,000. And so the total proceeds at sale is going to be $84,000, which means that the subsequent buyer is going to be buying the property for $234,000. But we should also think that, 22 years later, it's not unrealistic to think that that home is probably going to be worth $400,000 or $500,000 at that point in time. And so there really is some benefit that's going to get passed on through the resale, and that home is going to stay permanently affordable. Next. In this next example, it gets into the details even a bit more. This is taking into example that maybe over the life of my ownership, I want to do a couple things. And so same scenario with that $250,000 home, but 5 years into owning the home, let's assume that I want to add a new bedroom in the basement at a cost of $35,000. So in this case, it cost me $35,000, but per the formula here, we're going to recognize the square footage that I'm adding to that 1,000 square foot home. So I'm adding essentially 20% more square footage to the property. And the way we would calculate that is the new square footage, 250 square feet, divided by the total new square footage of 1,250 square feet, gets us to 20%. So our cap would be $33,000, or 20% of the future value of the property 5 years into ownership of $165,000, which gets us to $33,000. So what that means is the land trust is going to recognize the lesser of those two figures. The amount that I paid in this instance is a little bit more than what the land trust is able to recognize me for, but it's still $33,000. In addition to that, I'm deciding, per the previous slide, that I also want to decide the home 10 years into home ownership. And so per the formula from the previous slide, we're going to recognize $30,000 there. Adding the square footage does not depreciate, but that siding, per the previous slide, does depreciate. And so going down 22 years later, 12 years after the siding was added to the property or replaced, the calculation would be $150,000 plus the $66,000, because I've lived in the home for 22 years, plus the first qualified capital improvement. So I'm going to receive the full $33,000 because that did not depreciate. I added that value to the property, and $18,000 for the remaining life of the siding, which means that when I go to sell, I'll receive $117,000, and the next buyer is going to purchase the property for $267,000, which is the $150,000 that I paid plus the $117,000 that I'm walking away with when I sell my property, for a new sales price of $267,000. And again, the point made here is we're feeling pretty confident that 22 years from now, it's not unlikely that that property is going to be well in excess of the $250,000 that we purchased the property for 22 years before. Stephanie, I think that was my last slide.
Thank you, Jeff. I know that was a lot of detail. So before we move on and recap a couple of things, I just want to leave this slide up and just give a minute to just pause and see if there's any questions before we continue on, because I know that was a lot of information and some of it may have been new for you. Just want to check in with you guys. All right, well, continue on, but you can still ask questions, and you can also email us if you just like, I need to look at that all again. I need to watch that recording. We'll have that available for you, don't worry. So to recap, as a reminder, to be considered for CLT homeownership, your household must collectively earn less than the figures in this graph below at the time of closing on a CLT home. For our process, the first step is to understand what the CLT is. and how it works here in Indy. The next step, which many of you have already completed, is to become a member of the Indy CLT, which is what triggers our team to send you the CLT screening form, which is step 3. This screening form serves to determine pre-eligibility based on your income level. Step 4, check, you've done this. You've attended the Indy CLT Ground Lease Orientation. Congratulations. Those of you who have completed all 4 of these steps, so not just this one. There are several of you I see who maybe have done membership but not the screening form yet. I'll reach out to you individually to see if you're interested in continuing on. And if you're not, that's completely fine too, but just want to make sure that you are able to continue on if you want to. Can continue to step 5, which is the most work. The application, lender approval, and a HUD certified education course. As I mentioned, for those of you who have completed all 4 of the previous steps, we'll send you the application. Part of the application will be attaching your mortgage pre-approval letter and your certificate of completion for the homebuyer education course. Everything must be completed and submitted by the end of the day, September 30th, 2024, for consideration in this round of funding. Everyone who completes these first 5 steps will be entered into a lottery to receive program funds. The lottery for this round of funding will take place during our October CLT membership meeting on October 9th. Winners of the CLT lottery will be provided with a letter indicating the maximum amount of affordability assistance it'll provide and how long you'll have to make an offer on a home. As a reminder, because of limited funding at this time, 4 households will be accepted into the Homebuyer Choice Program. During our buyer info session, we asked if you're interested in a mortgage lender info session, and you said yes. So we have delivered, and we're bringing 5 lenders, one of which has joined us today. Thank you, Lynn, to you virtually so you can meet them and ask them questions. Registration information is available on this slide. Well, actually on the next slide. Sorry, I skipped ahead. There's that lovely QR code. Let me go back. My apologies. Next steps that you can take now, if you haven't already, pull your credit report and see if there's anything that's not accurate. You're going to want to do that and go through that process before you reach out to a lender. Don't make any big purchases or open credit cards if at all possible during this time. That could impact your eligibility to get a mortgage. Complete the screening form if you haven't already. Just a reminder, and I will be double checking, you do have to do membership before you do the screening form. So Alvin was kind in sharing the screening form link with you, but actually probably shouldn't have because that was not our process, but it's okay, I'll forgive him. But you do have to be a member. That is part of it.
Break all the rules.
He does, but membership is really important on how we're going to continue to grow this movement here in Indianapolis. We will send the application to you in the next 24 hours. And as we said, it's due on September 30th for the lottery drawing on October 9th. So now, time for questions. What questions do you have? How are your brains? That's a question I ask Alvin many times. How are you all feeling? What do you think? Memberships for homeowners only. So anyone can be a member of the CLT, but in order to become a homeowner through the Community Land Trust, you do have to be a member. I hope that makes sense, Sherry. And if not, please come off mute or type in the chat if you can't. And we actually have over 135 people in the last month who have indicated they want to become a member of the Indianapolis CLT, some of which who aren't even trying to buy a home with the CLT. They just want to be a part of this movement to help, affordable housing be a real possibility here in Indianapolis. So lots of people can participate in different ways. And sometimes you just want a like-minded gathering of people who want to change. Even if you're not able to directly participate in buying the home. All right, well, I don't see any more questions in the chat. Any last minute reminders? Alvin, Jeff, Aguila? I see a no from Jeff.
Thanks for y'all's time. Appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, everybody.
We will send out this recording and the slides as part of that wrap up, along with application information for those of you who have done the membership and the screening form. And if you have missed one of those steps along the way, I'll be reaching out to you individually just to check in. No pressure. Just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and knows where they are in the process if they're interested in pursuing this option for themselves. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us with questions. We're happy to help and we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, everybody.